Are you someone who needs an alarm to get up in the morning? Are you also someone who likes video game series such as Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Pikmin? These are two completely separate questions. I know. Or are they? I suppose that's what Nintendo had in mind when they decided to go forward and release their own brand of sound clock. This is the Nintendo Alarmo. It's $100. And this is a pretty expensive video. And in this expensive video, I'll be going over my experience with it. We're talking about unboxing, setting up the Alarmo, as well as my first few nights going through it using, the actual alarm itself. I'll be giving up my thoughts about the Alarmo, the good and bad. I'll even give it a review score. And I'll leave the rest to you to decide for yourself whether you want to go forward and buy it or not. Let me know though in the comments if you already have one and how it's working out for you. When I got the Alarmo, I noticed that each side of the box had a lot of information on it. They tell you about the supported games from the start, where the Alarmo should be placed when you use it, and how you stop the alarm. I know that last one might seem like a no-brainer, but trust me, just keep that in mind as you're watching the video. Now, don't take out the contents the way I did it, but inside the box you get a decently long USB cable, USB-C to A, a usage manual which pretty much tells you to plug in the Alarmo to begin the setup process, and the Alarmo itself. I was actually kind of surprised by how small the Alarmo really is. The shape of it kind of reminds me of something that came out of Super Mario Odyssey, actually, with the circular face and the knob. That knob, by the way, is a button, as well as a dial. As far as plugging in, I pretty much just plugged one end of the USB cable to the Alarmo and the other one to the USB port of my standing desk to power on the clock. The initial step-by-step instructions were pretty easy to understand. They want you to get pretty familiar with the knob as your means to navigate through options, pressing the button to confirm things, and using the dedicated back button to back out of things. I had to manually set up time, region, and date, which I thought was weird because this can probably get that information by connecting to Wi-Fi, but I suppose that they wanted to have it function as a standalone clock first and foremost. I did have a bit of fun setting up the sound and the motion setup. The sensor zone is one of the main appeals of the device as far as interacting with the alarm. To get the sensor zone established, the Alarmo wanted me to actually run a test from my bed, and I definitely struggled to get a decent camera angle and some lighting, so bear with me. I placed the clock on a shelving unit next to my bed and laid down for a moment until the alarm went off. Now, whenever I made a movement such as lifting my arm or turning my body over, Alarmo would play some feedback sounds. I was actually caught off guard by how fast it was responding to everything. Still, it was the act of me actually getting up from my bed that triggered a sound effect to indicate, yes, you got up. But that didn't mean that the alarm stopped. I actually needed to get out of bed and walk away to fully stop it. I will say I did have a persisting problem with that I will talk about later. Once the test was done though, I chose my alarm and the scene to complete the setup. I'm a Legend of Zelda fan, so I chose a scene from Breath of the Wild first. Then Alarmo showed me a couple of alarm modes to choose from. In short, it's one mode that makes the scene progressively louder, one that's at a seemingly consistent volume. Both of these, by the way, you need to walk away from the sensor zone to turn off the alarm. And then there's just a button to turn off the alarm. And with that, I was done with the setup. Connecting to the internet and linking your Nintendo account was the next thing Alarmo recommended. And that can be done by pressing the button and then just navigating to the settings. It's the same process that you'll have to do when you want to set up your sleepy sounds and your hourly chimes. Sleepy sounds, as it implies, will play calming music after the designated bedtime that you will input manually. I went to the sleepy sounds options where it prompted me to input said bedtime, followed by whether or not I even wanted sleepy sounds. Your bedtime is used for the data in the records section for your review. But as far as that and the sleepy sounds, they probably have that off by default for you, so you don't have to do any of that. But I wanted to be immersed in the experience. So remember, Breath of the Wild. I'm in my bed, and the night theme for the fields start playing. Sounds of the wind, wildlife, everything. I'm there, and not like in the way in which I'm playing the game and I'm just having Link sprinting around or riding on horseback like a maniac on a mission. No, this is gonna sound extremely corny, but I truly mean this. It was like I was laying under the stars, just existing in a different world. It just so happens that there was someone playing piano nearby. Now, I don't think that made me fall asleep faster, but that was like a different experience and perspective of Breath of the Wild that I never really stopped to think about. Anyway, as I turned around to check the clock like that night, I noticed that the screen would brighten up as I moved, but then dim itself like when I stopped moving. I later found that this was actually a screen brightness setting that you can manually like change if you don't like that. But it's nice if I wake up in the middle of the night and want to check the time and not want to get blinded by a bright display. I probably knocked out soon after I stopped that phone recording, because the next thing I knew, I just heard the alarm go off. And because I know that it needed to be turned off by walking away from it, I immediately got out of bed and did just that. That was probably the fastest I ever gotten out of bed in a long time. I did have some difficulty though, like turning off the alarm fully though. Like it didn't really make that celebratory sound when I left my bed. I had to come back and just manually turn it off. Before I went to bed the following night, I changed my alarm scenes from Breath of the Wild to Pikmin 4. Sleepy sounds is on. I am not familiar with Pikmin 4, haven't played it. But the sleepy sounds for this one were pretty nice. It was like space themed. Kind of reminded me of Super Mario Galaxy. Put Galaxy 2 on the Switch, by the way. Same thing happened. I got up and walked away as soon as I heard that alarm, but the alarm didn't really fully turn off. Weird. I pretty much had to walk to the side of my bed and then try to walk off the corner just within the viewpoint of the Alarmo. And it worked. Weird. But I figured it out. And I'll add that to the review portion here. And so reviewing the Alarmo, I definitely like the design of the clock. It stands out quite a lot from my other devices that it kind of makes them look muted in comparison. The display showing characters based on any of the scenes you've chosen is a fun addition, and the motion sensor, making them just react to all your movements, makes the device kind of come to life. I like that also the ability to shuffle your alarm sounds both within and across the different video game franchises. I like that type of variation, and that could be really good for so we don't get stuck in the same vibe every single time we wake up. I also think that the Alarmo can be pretty loud actually, which is essential for someone like me who can sleep through an alarm pretty easily. I think utilizing the sensor zone encouraged me to get up faster, and it's proven to be very effective on me in that regard, but it's also nice that there are other button modes to allow folks to wake up at their own pace. And lastly, I'd like that this selection of sounds is all part of an ever-growing library that we're going to see over time. We know that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Animal Crossing New Horizons will be free updates in the future. I just hope that we get more titles added later on, sooner rather than later. Now, the downsides, they start with the display of the Alarmo. Along with the general brightness setting and the motion dimming setting, there's also this automatic dimming mode that you can't really control. That's based on the surroundings. So in my particular situation, my Alarmo is facing a relatively dim part of this room, which is pretty shocking since I have all these lights pointed at me. Where the Alarmo's at, the screen is pretty dim, even on the brightest setting. It's not too comfortable to read text, but I also understand this is because my clock is just kind of facing away from a light source. So the issue is something I would have to kind of fix like over on my end. But what I don't understand is why that display is of a rectangular cutout out of a whole circular face. Like, what was I even there for? Why did we even design it like this if we're not going to use the entire thing? What I'm saying is that this is a missed opportunity. I wanted to mention this aspect of the Alarmo as a downside, but I think this is a little bit more complicated. Let me explain. This is the motion sensor, by the way. Earlier, I explained that the difficulty of me turning off my alarm by walking away. I think this is actually more of a personal circumstance. That sensor zone doesn't work in my area because the motion detection is probably most likely being obstructed by this shelving unit. This guy right here. I'd only realized this as a possibility while I was writing out the script for this video. I'll overlook this as my final score on this. Another downside then would have to be the price point. It's $100, dude. Doesn't really feel right with the product right now. With all the given features, I think that motion sensing is like the key component in this alarm that makes it very unique. You can correct me in the comments if there are other alarm clocks that utilize motion sensing at a lower price. I'm sure that being a licensed Nintendo product has something to do with how high that price point is, but I think you can do more to make it justifiable at that price. Like, for example, you could actually do something with the screen to make it larger to fit the circular face. Sorry. Also, maybe an OLED screen just to contribute to the $100 price point while also just making colors pop. There's nothing wrong with the LED screen as far as the colors. I'm just putting it out there. Also, if we have a much larger library of like games and sounds from like the start, I think that might have justified the price a little bit more. Also, one last nitpick. I wish there were more colors. Red's obviously for Nintendo and Mario, but I would have went with like a green color, maybe like a Breath of the Wild, like champion tunic color, maybe Splatoon 3's purple and yellow scheme. In conclusion, I'm giving the Alarmo a 6 out of 10 critically. It's fun, potentially effective way to wake up. The setup and options give you a lot of choices on games and how your alarm will function with them. However, that small display and the price point may be kind of a hard sell, even to the biggest Nintendo enthusiasts. But if you have the disposable income and you really like the different titles and soundtracks from Nintendo's video games, it's a pretty cool clock, and you should totally go for it. And because of that, I'd probably give this a personal 7 score. But you know what else is a pretty expensive piece of hardware? The PlayStation 5 Pro, which we actually did a video on, if you're interested in hearing more about that. Once it comes out, it's probably going to be the next powerful console to date. But at what cost? Thank you all so much for tuning in for this video. Like the video if it helped. Subscribe to the Tanuki channel so that we may one day attain monetization status. And I'll see you guys in the next one.